Hello and welcome back to Divine Messy Human. Today I have with me the amazing Fiona, who is the happiness hunter. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, Amanda. It's lovely to be here with you.
I've been looking forward to this conversation. I've only met you in person once, I think. But I've been following you for a while and, we sort of keep crossing over in the same circles. So I thought it was about time we actually had a deep dive conversation.
Oh, no, I'm really, really looking forward to today. I think we'll have a
Excellent.
great conversation.
Fantastic. So get started with how you became the happiness hunter. How did that come about?
Well, it's really interesting actually because it's the story, and I'm
Mm,
like, do we need to keep telling the story? But I think there's elements and aspects of it which are necessary, but without going too much into it. But essentially in a nutshell, I'd got to a stage in my life where I was so unhappy, and there was
mm,
really not one aspect of my life that was working well. And I had this sort of moment of kind of awakening where I was just looked around me and I was just like, what is going on here? Like how has this become my life? And I just I couldn't imagine like this. I was like, I just sort of it was almost an out of body experience where I was just sort of staring down the barrel of this future life, and I couldn't imagine living it. It wasn't that I wanted to end my life or anything like that. It was just this moment of like, this is not how it's meant to be. And it was in this moment that I kind of had this absolute understanding
mm.
that I had created it. Like it was my life. And so I just made a decision that I wanted to be happy, and I was going to do whatever it took to change. And that was a really pivotal moment. And that was probably about 10 years ago now. And it's been a I think as we embark upon this, it really is a new way of being, in a way of of understanding and taking personal responsibility. We kind of get shown we get shown everything. And what I have discovered is that happiness is to be found in the overcoming of obstacles and challenges in our lives, and not in the absence of them. And I think that was quite liberating. So yeah, so basically I started my own business because I'd been unable to find work. And then the happiness hunter evolved. It's been an evolution that's kind of happened alongside my own personal, I don't want to call it transformation or growth or journey or anything like that, but just my, let's call it ongoing path to presence or something like that. I don't really know how to articulate it differently than that. But yeah, so was really the happiness hunter was just has come about is about my own experience. It's kind of manifested in the external world, and I get to now share that with other people.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's really important what you say about, the story. It does feel like we're telling it over and over again. And in so many ways we are, because in some ways that's how people find us and resonate with us and go, gee, I actually want to work with you because you've been through this stuff and you've overcome this stuff. And also because we've evolved through and past it, it's often going, well, was that even me? Was that really who I was? So I get exactly what you mean in terms of, that story. And it feels to us like it's, oh, here we go again.
Yeah, and I think it keeps breathing life into it as well. And
Mm,
I was talking with a really good friend yesterday, and I was explaining how, I'd done this presentation the other week, and I'd had this kind of awareness of I've had it a few times. It's like the story, I've just got to stop with the story. And it's like, but who am I without the story? So it's letting go of that story, because yes, it is what's got me to this point or where I've come from, but it's not what I share. Like what I share is, okay, how do we, if we if the story is in the past and the story ends here, what does moving forward from here now look like? And it's actually like, okay, well, we've all got a story, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got a story. Every single human being walking this planet has childhood trauma. Everybody's got
Yep.
terrible things that have happened, and it's not about mine's worse than yours or whatever. We've all had stuff we've overcome, but I think the really powerful message I've got to share, probably you've got to share, other people have to share, is actually being in the present moment. And what does being and doing in this present moment look like, based on perhaps what you've learned and discovered and uncovered and let go of and stuff in the past, or the mistakes that you've made, or the outcomes that you've had that weren't quite what you wanted? How do you bring all of that wisdom to this present moment and move forward fully, consciously, presently from here?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I completely agree. And it's a realization I've had a number of times of going, oh, I don't want to breathe life into that. That I'm past that story. I've healed that story. And in so many ways and so many thousands of dollars, I have healed that story. And you're right. I go the same way. If we're poking energy into it, it's like all those shadow workers out there whose lives are in absolute shambles because all they're doing is looking at the shadow work rather than integrating the shadow and moving on from that. And I love that question of who am I without my story, because I think it is so potent and powerful, especially when you ask it to, clients who are in the middle of it. It's like, well, who will you be without that? And that's often where you can get some of those resistances that they're holding on to because they're like, oh, crap, I am actually poking at this.
Yeah, and I think also too with that as well, like, really asking better questions is,
Mm,
what is a more helpful way of looking at this? What is a high
mm,
perspective that I can look from this? But I think also too, as we go along this work, a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing, I think, as well. And I've got this thing like of spiritual superiority, and I think it is something. It's a stage that we all go through,
mm.
where we actually think I've got the knowledge and that person doesn't. And it's like, no, 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 no. That's the ego playing the tricks, right? And that's where we can get stuck. A lot of us can get stuck at that point, and I know that I've certainly had my experience of that. And it's when you sort of become aware of that, it's horrifically confronting, because
Oh,
you don't,
yes.
and you think you're aware, but you're not aware. And I think understanding that and being able to forgive yourself and knowing that you've been forgiven, and understanding that that is the path and that is the process, that to me is very comforting to know that that's part of the journey. But whether you can sort of transcend that, that's the test, right?
Yeah.
And becoming aware, of where we kind of are deluding ourselves. And so one of the things that I have to be very aware of my program is that I can feel like I'm taking responsibility or dealing with things properly and maturely in the correct way, but all I'm doing is giving myself a hard time in this present moment about past mistakes, thinking that I'm actually working through stuff, but actually I'm not. And I'm actually just staying stuck and creating more disharmony and stress for myself. Whereas if I can just go, okay, I made a mistake, or I didn't perhaps deal with that as best as I could, but I forgive myself for that, and I'm willing to let myself off the hook and let that go. That's quite transformative as well, because we can often think we're working on stuff, poking around in the darkness and stuff. We do absolutely need to bring things to light, and things need to be exposed, and we need to become aware of them. Then we go, okay, I've got that now, I can move on. And one of the things that I'm a massive, probably very similarly to you, like I really advocate for journaling. I think
Mm.
it's an incredibly powerful practice. But again, we can also get stuck in practices like journaling as well. Like, all of them are tools. They're tools. None of them are the absolute definitive answer. The answer is always within and about letting go.
Yeah.
So having awareness of these tools, having awareness of our stories, having awareness of all of the practices and all of those sorts of things is very important. But we also need to be very aware that we're not relying on those things or leaning into those things and actually under the illusion that we are dealing with the illusion, but that's the illusion as well.
Yeah. I
And I
love
think, Yeah.
I love that, because when you talk about the tools, it's really interesting. There was a time when in my sessions I would bring out, all the tools that kind of tested up. And in the way I've been trained, we look for, I guess, the root cause, we clear that, and then we clean up on the way back, which is still the way I work. But I might have used, I don't know, 4 or 5 different remedies or something like that during a normal session when I was first learning. And there was this one time where I just woke up and I went, I can do this job without any of those tools, because there's still external things that we are relying on to do the internal work. But the client knows, if I tell them like what emotion has come up through the muscle testing, they know the relevance, and often just knowing it, shining a light on it, is enough to clear what's actually been held onto for so long, because it's bringing it up to the light.
Mm.
And I love what you say about illusion. One of my big questions over the last 2 years, every day for me, is I can see other people are deluded in their life. So show me where I am deluding myself. And that has been one of my sort of prayers almost every day of, okay, show me where I'm still deluding myself. Show me where I'm in disillusion, because it's going to happen. I'm human. So
But
show me the
remember,
path.
remember though, the ego is just going to keep you stuck in that as well if that's what you're looking for.
Oh, it's
No,
not,
it's
it's
like
not
this.
a keeping on looking for
Yeah,
it, but it's that. And look, it's not a daily prayer, but
yeah.
there
I
are,
understand
when
what you're
things,
saying.
when things get stuck, it's that whole thing of, okay, show me. And when I have no idea, I just use the show me the way, which I know is just me asking me anyway.
Do you know one of my favorite things I do when I'm struggling with the external world?
Mm,
It's been a truly very confronting process, but I'll go, right, that person or that thing's really annoying me. Like I'm
mm,
really struggling with the way they're approaching things, what they're saying, what they're doing, whatever, or that person's being hypocritical or they can't manage themselves or whatever. I'd write down their name at the top of a piece of
mm,
paper and I just go to town and all my thoughts, all my feelings, everything. I just like literally vomit that out on the page and I don't filter it and I don't edit it.
mm.
And then I go back through it and I just replace their name with my own.
Yeah.
And that I find really helpful because it just helps me go, okay, if I know, you and I both know, if I'm seeing somebody being hypocritical, I'm being hypocritical, okay?
Yeah.
Like I know that,
Yeah.
but they're being really hypocritical, right? And
Yeah.
I don't like what I'm seeing in them. But until I can see beyond them into me, and they're the mirror shining that light, but I found that's to been very helpful rather than in my mind trying to understand it and analyze it. And this is where I think those practices of like journaling are so
Mm,
powerful. But I do know I can get a bit stuck in sometimes in it's like almost navel gazing, poking around.
mm.
It's like it's not my business to be poking around. I've got the
Yeah.
awareness of it. Now I just need to change my behavior.
Yeah.
So I need to become aware in the present moment of my behavior and change it.
Yeah. Absolutely, 100%. And it's interesting, I use that idea of, we want to be focusing on where we're heading and then look at what's the next step.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to spend most of our time, because everything between our next step and our, desired outcome is pointless anyway, because it's all just noise and what if and our head getting anxious and all the rest of it. And then glancing at, okay, what's holding me back, if you feel like you don't have that momentum. But I was feeling a bit overwhelmed from a really busy last couple of weeks. I looked at my diary this morning and went, you know what, things can wait till tomorrow. And I spent 3 hours walking the beach.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't about anything other than just going, I just need to stop for a minute and slow down for a minute. And whatever happens, happens. You mentioned the happiness is in overcoming the obstacles, which I love. Talk more into that for us.
Okay. So, when I was so unhappy. And I say to people now, I go, I don't really talk about my story very much, but I have written it down. If you want to read it, you can go. If you want to learn more about it, you can go read my book. And that felt to me like I'm still honoring. I'm still saying you can find out about it, but it's not something I really spend too much time talking about anymore. But this really for me was, like if we talk about, our evolution and our growth and all of that sort of stuff, like we don't learn anything when we're comfortable. We don't grow or develop when we're comfortable and there's, and nothing much is happening. This we call it the comfort zone. But actually, if we look at those times in our lives where we actually have been challenged or had difficulties, and if we have had the ability and the presence of mind to really look at that as this is an opportunity for me to change or grow or to learn something new or to whatever, let something go, whatever that challenge is that I'm experiencing in my immediate or external world, to lean into the discomfort of that. Like, so it's in the valleys, and all the spiritual teachers, any spiritual text will say to you or teach us that it's through the darkness and in the valleys that we actually discover something about ourselves that we might not have been aware of before, whether that's our connection with God or our inner strength or our resilience, or we have to develop things, we have to become things. It's through the difficulties and the challenges. And to me, like, that's what really makes life fulfilling, meaningful experience, is actually becoming more than who we are now. And that if we think about happiness as a state of being, as a state of mind, and living in peace within yourself, living a fulfilling life, purposeful life, connection with others, and all of those sorts of things, when we are going through struggles and difficulties in our relationships and having to learn how to communicate better, for example, that's what brings us that state of peace and happiness and joy, I think. It's easy,
Yeah.
and it's not anything to do with the external world. It's an internal thing. And we can look at the external world as bringing us happiness, but that's not happiness. That's a fleeting sense of something, I've got something I want and now move on to the next thing. But that feeling of actual solidness, personal ability to depend on yourself, know you've got your own back, to me, that's a sense of peace, connection, whatever, that's happiness. And we discover that through going through obstacles and challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why in both the heroes and heroines journey, it's about that road of trials and how we get through that and how we grow and develop and then bring that wisdom back. Yeah, it's interesting we talk about the problems in the archetypal sense and looking at the fact that problems will always be there to help us evolve. It's when we go around and around and we keep seeing the same problem that we've got to work out why that one's keeping on coming. But for the most part, they're there to push us forward and to help us see what we've not seen before and to learn new things and to learn how to fail often and regularly.
Yeah, but I don't know where this idea came from that life was meant to be this smooth road. Like, I don't, and like people say, and yes, absolute tragedies happen, and I'm not denying that, terminal illnesses, kids dying, wars, all this, whatever. They're tragic. Like, they're very difficult things to kind of wrap your head around and understand. But that's the human experience. Like, and so life is a series of curveballs. Life is a series of discomfort, uncomfortable things, like things that aren't fair. What's fair anyway? Like, that's life. And I think I look around sometimes and I just think, what planet are we living on that we think that everything's supposed to be fair and good and perfect all the time? Like, no, that's not nature. Like, that's not how things work. Like, you watch those documentaries, and the hyena's been killed by the lion, but but the hyena's killing something. Like, and the documentary makers don't go in and try to save people and fix things and make it fair. It's like, that's like life. It can be brutal and uncomfortable and difficult, and we've got to learn how to find the joy in the moments and to accept with absolute equanimity whatever it is presented before us, with grace and courage and love and compassion and forgiveness. And if we can do that, then we are able to ride whatever waves, like, just ride the waves.
Yeah, absolutely, whilst also acknowledging that we're going through tough shit and it's hard and it's full of grief and it's all of those things. And it's interesting, when you think of that contrast of life, there is the good and the bad. We wouldn't be able to see the good without the bad. And I don't like those two words because, of course, it is that binary thinking. But, sometimes they're the only words we have. But, we want to go into that.
It doesn't really matter. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can't see that color and texture and depth to the world if we're just using black and white to create it. There's this whole grayscale and a whole Pantone chart that we can experience if we allow ourselves to.
But I think also too, who says it's right and who says it's wrong? And that's
Mm,
just my perception and
yeah.
your perception. And then therefore we have division, and then
Mm,
we have disagreement, and then we have disharmony. Whereas if we can just accept, it's like, well, you see the world, you see the world. And I
yeah.
can respect that and agree with that because that's your perception. That's your truth. That's your reality.
Yeah.
And I can have mine, and we can agree. We can just learn how to inhabit this space together.
Mm, yeah. How do you find that you bring some of this teaching, so to speak, into your mothering journey?
Oh, so interesting because I've got two kids that are literally a lot of the time Israel Palestine, like they are literally at war, right? And the thing I really focus on is about, I really teach them that life isn't fair. Like let's not pretend it's going to be fair. Like I can't make decisions that are 50% equal. Like it's not possible. But I do try to consider everybody's viewpoint. And, like if you go on a camp, well, hopefully you'll be able to go on a camp. Or, if I buy you a new pair of shoes, but you don't need a new pair of shoes, I'm not going to buy you a new pair of shoes, like that kind of thing. But actually really focusing on like really active communication and active listening and helping guide them to a level of self-understanding and a level of self-awareness, but also to understand that things aren't always what they seem, and what we are being told or what they are being taught or what is being shared with them might not necessarily be how the way things are, and encouraging them to think critically about the world. And when I say critically, I don't mean critically as in critically, but I just mean like just be open that things might not always be as we're being told as things are. And I think really for me is about, in my parenting, being really honest and admitting when I've made mistakes. And, we all get angry, but actually just saying to them, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. Always being the first to apologize. And sometimes just saying, look, just so you know, like I'm not angry with you, but, I was actually a bit stressed about X, Y, Z. This is what I'm doing to address X, Y, Z so that I don't kind of get to that point of reaction again. However, this is what you can do, because I find it quite stressful when this happens and stuff. So really creating that space for just honest, open dialogue, because at the end of the day, we're teaching them how to be human beings, right? They're our kids now, but they're actually someone's potential partner or someone's parent or someone's boss or someone's employee, and just helping them understand what it is to live a values-based life as well. And it's not just about them. Like they're a very me generation. And how can they practice caring for other people, like my elderly parents or their little sisters or whatever. So
Yeah, absolutely. I completely get that. How do you bring some of those skills that you use, say, in your parenting journey, in, the journey you've been on, into your business to really help your clients, I guess, see where their blind spots are or to help them move forward?
So I'm very practical in everything that I do. So I study metaphysics. I've got quite a lot of metaphysical knowledge. I work with a master. And I don't consider myself woo-woo or anything like that. To me, universal laws are very practical. It's not about, going back to that point of spiritual superiority. Like to me, the only way you can prove that you have any knowledge of anything is through your implementation of it. And if you are not implementing it, then you don't know it. That's my feeling around it. So everything I teach and do is very practical. So it's really bringing it back to the present moment, taking personal responsibility, being accepting, being grateful, being forgiving, right? What does it mean for me in this present moment now in terms of how I'm showing up and how I'm behaving and what I'm doing and the results that I'm getting? And so helping people, I can be very direct in my approach, and that's I've come to accept, and it's been a bit of a journey this as well. That's my method, and it's not for everyone, and that's okay. But I trust the process now for me and for my clients, and because I trust it, they trust it. So it's not from any spot. It's not about, like, it's not even about overcoming imposter syndrome or anything like that. It's just being in the moment and
Mm.
truly trusting. And sometimes I'll say to them, you know, what I'm going to, what I'm going to say to you now, like I'll always say to them whenever we start working together, is like, at some point in the process, you're going to hate my guts, and that's okay, because it's not personal. I'm just here highlighting something within you. And I think, so there's a lot of mutual trust and courage that's required from everyone in this process, because
Yeah.
and I think if we can step into that, then that's when the transformation occurs.
Yeah. Oh, I completely understand the direct approach.
Yeah.
I've I've actually had a few clients sort of go, I knew I had, they've left and then come back, and they've come back and gone, I knew I couldn't keep seeing you until I sorted out those issues. And now I'm back because I've sorted out the issues that kept getting highlighted.
Yeah.
Good.
But
That's what we,
like, as my teacher says, your true friends will be honest with you.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and if they don't, then they're not your true friends.
Yeah.
Because how is
Yeah.
that helpful? Just patting your ego and saying there, you're right, they're all wrong, or what? It doesn't help.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Why
having
are you
that,
buying into that story again?
yeah, but having that spotlight shined on, whether that's for ourselves or with other people, it is unbelievably uncomfortable. Like, it is excruciatingly uncomfortable at times, but if you can stick with it, you get through the other side. You do actually get through the other side, and you are different when you come through that other side. And I think that's the part of the other illusion, and this is something I've discovered over the years as well, is that the more you think you're moving, the less you're moving. The less you think you're moving, the faster you're going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, completely.
Like, the
Completely.
progress is happening in a completely different way or timeline, or anything that
Mm.
we can, in our mental construct, relate to. But
Yeah.
it's in the valley that we are growing. When we actually feel like we're going backwards, we've learned nothing, we don't know anything. That's the humility. It's through those times when we are actually brought to our knees, metaphorically, literally, physically, spiritually, that we are growing. If
Mm.
we can stick at it and not get angry at the person that we think put us there.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like we know that we're the
It
ones that
does
carry the
happen.
cross of our own
Correct.
destruction. Yeah.
Like, we created it. But I think too, like, when I really understood that, that was such empowering knowledge for me. I was like, okay, this absolute shit show. If I have created this, I can create anything. Like, if I can create this, like, what is the opposite of this? Like, what is the contrast of that? And that's when things started to shift for me, because I was like, okay, well, I could focus on, that's kind of going back to that story before. I could focus on this, or I could just go up here and start looking up there and start just taking action here, but focusing on there. And I think what's fascinating is that over the years, I keep going back to telling the story. And every time I do, I go, why am I doing this again? Like, I'm just feeding this. It's just old energy. Let's just talk about what's happening now and what we're doing to move forward from here.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's picking at the scab. And it's like you've already got a scar there, so
Well,
why
it's
would
like,
you?
waving this flag of, hard done by story,
Mm.
here's me, the victim. And, it's like, but everyone's got that. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's got that. And that was pretty confronting for me, actually, to realize that actually the story is just, it's in
I
the
almost
valley.
crashed my car when that realization came in for me. I was driving down the Nepean, which is a road here in Melbourne, Australia, and I had it drop in that I was free every day to change my choices. So something in me chose to stay. And it was this massive, whoa, holy crap kind of moment. But I tell you what, you don't get many proper drop-ins like that just change everything. But when you do, as you say, it's those subtle ones that are actually so profound that you go, oh my God, my life is going to be completely different now.
Yeah. And yeah, yeah.
Mm. I know that I read a post of yours, it must have been a while ago now. I'm really bad with timeframes, about your prayer practices. So speak to us a little bit about that. I think it's such a lost art and I do it so regularly. So talk to me about how you bring that into your practices.
So that was really unexpected. The whole faith spirituality thing was very unexpected for me, Amanda. So when I, blah, 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 back then.
Yeah, all the things.
Um, so I had actually developed a really bad drinking problem. Like it'd been for my whole life, but it was just this moment of like, I actually have to stop drinking. And I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to do that. And I Googled like drinking, and AA came up, and then this, and I was like, I just can't. AA just did not. It really does work. AA works, right? But I was like, no. And one of the reasons, there was two reasons why. One was this concept of like kind of submitting and handing over to a high power. It was like it was like I can't even imagine that. But the other one, and this is what I think is fascinating, because I didn't have any of the knowledge that I've got now then, was this idea that you go to meetings and you have to get up and say, I've got a problem. I've got a problem. And I'm like, if I stop drinking, I have no problems. Like my problems are over, right? And then, and as I was come to understand that the thing was not the thing, but, like at that, I was like, well, if I'm not drinking now, I don't have a problem. I don't want to go week in, week out, like exacerbating this problem, telling the story, listening to other people tell their stories. I don't care. And so that was for me. But then I was getting in the car driving one day. This is before I stopped drinking, and I looked in the rear vision mirror, and my kids were tiny. They're in the back, so I was so hungover. And I caught my glimpse of my eyes in the rear vision mirror. And by this stage, I wasn't ever looking at myself in the mirror. I was just disgusted by myself. I hated myself, all the rest of it. And I heard this voice say to me, Fiona, you have to stop drinking and start meditating. And I'm like, where did that come from? So anyway, I started meditating, and it was the meditation that really created the space for me to transform. I gave up drinking and I started meditating, but it was the meditation that opened something up. And then I met my teacher. And then, of course, meditation is a channel, right? Like that's a bypassing of all the shit in your head. And yeah, this something started to happen for me in terms of really opening myself up to God, if you will. And then I got baptized. And then, I started reading the Bible. So, I started reading all sorts of spiritual texts and stuff. But I don't know, it was very, very, very unexpected. And, I started praying, and prayer is so unbelievably powerful, because prayer is admitting we need help. Prayer is asking for, there is such a humility in prayer to say, I don't have all the answers, and I can't do this by myself, and I don't want to do this by myself. I'm asking for the support and the guidance and the connection with that higher power. And that was a high power. Honestly, I would have gone to my grave telling you that was all hocus pocus. It was all rubbish. None of it was real. But I think as you open yourself up to this, genuinely properly open yourself up. Like I was like, I'm done with my life being like the way it is. Something you're calling in something else. And so meditation for me really is about becoming aware, and prayer is about sending it back out, and we don't pray enough. None of us do, because we think we've got all the answers and we can fix it all by ourselves, and blah blah blah, which is just I just think it's sad in a way. And I think what's really fascinating is the further along this path I go, the less I care what people think. I actually don't. It just doesn't bother me. And I just think what I always find really fascinating, I don't share about it a lot, but when I do, how many people are just, it's like people are thirsty for it. This response to it is quite incredible. And genuinely what that feeling of connection and fellowship with other people, and that when you've experienced that, like it's not something I can explain to you. It's not something we can write down. It is literally something you have to experience. And yeah, so it's like, as I think as you move along this path, you have a need or a calling to be able to share that with other people, not from a place of I'm in the pulpit or, you know, I know better than you or anything like that, but genuinely as a fellow traveler, you know. That's how I
Yeah.
feel about it.
Yeah, I really do love the way that you describe that. I think there is that opening that happens when you're in a true state of surrender. And it's not about a weakness. You recognize how strong it is to admit that you know so little of what's going on and that you're in control of next to none of it, if
Oh,
any.
no, look, and this is bringing it back to that circle of responsibility. And you can, like, I can tell you what I can control. I can control what I put in my mouth.
Mm.
I can control whether I go for a walk. I can generally control what time I go to bed. I can control that I meditate every day. I can control how much water I drink. I can control what I'm doing with my time and what I'm saying yes to and what I'm saying no to and my boundaries. And I can control how I show up and how I speak to people and how I think. And there's so many things I can control. And as I'm doing that, my life is going to naturally transform. But I'm not sitting here doing that on my own. And
No.
that going back again to that point, like that spiritual superiority, when you actually think you've got all the answers, and then you literally are brought to your knees again.
Mm.
It's like you know nothing, and we're going to rip that rug so hard from under you. What have you got? Show us what you've got. Are you going to stand up again and still continue to along this path? You know, and the rug keeps getting ripped, and that's like the death of the ego.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that is when you really can live and experience that. But if you think you know all the answers, then you don't know anything.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Absolutely. How do most of your clients, I know you mentioned that they, or people that you mention it to, are thirsty for this. And I agree because I think we've been in a big spiritual drought almost. It's like we were ruled by the church, which, whatever people believe of that, and we've gone a complete pendulum swing almost the other way. And I completely agree with you that this work is completely not woo woo. It is grounded in experience and fact, and a lot of science is now catching up to it, and a lot of questions are being asked. So, how do you find people respond? I know you mentioned the fellowship and they've got that thirst. Do you find that their resistance shifts easily, or do you find that those who sort of dig their heels in eventually come round? Like, what have you found in that?
So it's a really interesting question. And look, I can only help people who are ready. And I can't make them be ready. I've tried, I've tried. I can't fix it for people. I can just, they have to make that decision within themselves. And generally, and it'll probably be very similar to you too. Like by the time people get ready to want to work with me, they know they need help, and there is no question in their mind that I am the person to help them. It's not to say I'm the only person in the world, but it's like they know there's something within our connection that they know I'm the one for them at this moment in time.
Yeah.
And if we don't have those two things, we can't work together.
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
hitting for a quick fix. I can't help them.
No.
There's no quick fix. There's no quick fix. And the other thing is also too, I mean, I've, obviously had a lot of my own stuff to work through in terms of money blocks and, value and worth and, who am I to be doing this? And I've over the years just, chipped away at all of that stuff. I would do this work for free, and I have done this work for free. But you know what happens when I do this work for free?
I do.
Nobody gets anywhere. And it's not about the money. It's about what that commitment to step into that space represents. And obviously I've got a family to feed and, whatever. But it's like really understanding that, I do so much. It's hard to put it into words, but there just has to be that meeting of I am ready to change and I am here to help you.
Mm.
And we're on a level together. I'm not above, there's none of that. It's like we're here together. It's like a meeting of our minds, and until it's like, and then once that locks in together, then we can move forward together. But if I'm dragging them, or if, it just doesn't work. So, if I'm working with people and then they decide it's not for them, I'm like, okay, there's no problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yep.
Not your time.
I've I've often found, or not often, but I've turned a couple of clients away, especially this year, going, yeah, I'm not your person. I'm
Yeah.
just, you can see that lack of congruence almost between you. So I really do resonate with that. And I also know that when you're undercharging, when you're not charging at all, there isn't the respect for the work, there isn't the reverence for the work. And all of that rubbish that is out there about nervous system hacks and this hack and that hack and the other hack. And I'm going, if you think this works quick and easy, good luck.
But the thing is too, like, anything, like if we believe something's going to work, it's going to work.
Mm,
But it's like we're just guides and
yeah.
shining a light. But I can tell people things. If they're not ready to hear it, they're not going to hear it. So how do I help facilitate that process for somebody to come to that awareness for themselves? That's
Mm,
really what this is about. And I'm here to challenge your thinking, and I'm here to give you tools, and I'm here to hold the space for you emotionally while you work through it. I'm not going to listen to your stories. I'm going to shut your stories down if you start telling me a story, and that can be very confronting as well. But then if people can stick with it, they get the results.
yeah.
And, like I've got a 6-week program, and I have people can come through it time and time and time again, and they pay a little bit of money. They have to pay. Again, there's no point me offering them to come in for a refresher for free. I've done that. It doesn't work. But if I charge them a little bit of money, not a huge amount of money, because they've already invested in the program, but they pay a little bit to come through for the coaching because I want to keep working with them and, all of that sort of stuff, then they get the results. And I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand. We've got this thing here laid out on a platter, but if we haven't paid for it, then we don't do it. Where's the logic in this?
Yeah. Yeah. And even for a lot of people, how many courses do they pay for and then not do anything with? So,
and look, that's the thing also too. I'm very conscious of the fact the work that I do with people as well is that the real power comes in the connection. So I just mostly do small group stuff. And I find that at this stage of my life, business, whatever, that's actually what works really well for me. And that's actually what gets the best results for people, because they do get a little bit of one-on-one, and they do get a little bit of, yes, you have time. It's not just being in the audience and observing. There's actually a different level of connection there, and that works really well for me at this stage. That could change tomorrow, who knows. But that's actually where I find I'm able to work most effectively with people at the moment at my stage where I'm at as well.
yeah. And I think you're right. It does change, and it changes quickly. I mean, my change of business that happened in the middle of the year was literally I woke up one day and it's it's kind of all thrown up in the air and coming down, and I'm just, plugging pieces back in where I never thought they'd go. And so I completely understand that, because as we evolve, our business has to evolve, because we are that, even though we're separate energetic entities, we're still so much of our business, and it's driven by that. So
100%. And
yeah.
I think also too, like I'm really focusing on like simplicity at the moment. My kids, I shared with you the other day, like they're 12 and 13, 12 and 14, nearly 13, nearly 15. And it's like, I'm just like, how do I structure things that I'm able to work and do my work and keep things ticking over? But, maybe for the next 12 months, what does that look like? And I'm like, well, I just really want to simplify everything. I want to have an offering that is, I just work with a few people next year, like as my core business offering intensively, because that is going to be getting them the best results, but actually makes the most sense for me as well. And so I'm having those really lovely conversations, mostly with people I already know in my existing network, about this program I'm running for next year. So I've already built, I've done the hard yards, and it's like, okay, well, what does the simple version of everything look like for next year? Gosh, it's so liberating. It's so liberating. It's like I've still got my big vision and my goals and all of that. But what would it like next year to just like kind of breathe in it all? and have
Yeah.
space, just the time and the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the time and the space is kind of what gives us the creativity and the feminine aspect, archetypally, of course, which we need to balance out with that doing and striving and pushing and all of the things and the structure and the
Yeah.
container aspect. Mm. It's a
And I think
beautiful
the key,
awareness.
yeah, and was talking with you the other day as well about that idea of, I think we get to this point in our lives, in our businesses, whatever, because we have put in the hard yards. Like, this didn't come. I didn't wake up one day and just go, it's going to be really easy and simple in my business, because I have got the people I can talk to, and I have got the products and the programs and the frameworks, and I've built all of the stuff. It's done. Like, it's done now. It's like, how do I just utilize what I've already got, or work with what I've already got? I don't need to make new things. I don't need to find new things. I don't need to go and meet new people. I can actually just work with in this space I'm in now. And it's like, this space is here now because I have worked hard to get here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's allowed to feel easy. It's allowed to be easy, but we can't expect everything to be easy if we're not willing to sacrifice and put in at the start. Like, that's just
Yeah.
that's the law of the universe.
Mm. Well, it's interesting because I'm at that different space because I am creating and I am changing everything up. And so I'm just putting all my frameworks together now. I've had them swimming for
Yeah.
years, but they've not come out in the right form before. Bits of them have, and I was always like, oh no, that didn't feel quite right. But now that I've got that clarity, that's the bit I'm at. But as I mentioned to you, because my kids are older, I've been in the, or evolving through my motherhood journey from being, doing the mothering to being mum. And now that I'm in that state where, they still need help and support, of course, because they're at that age, but they're a little bit more independent. And so it's given me the space to be able to welcome in what is that next iteration of my business, which is super exciting. So I really understand what you're talking about, because I know that this then framework will create that simplicity as it beds in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And honoring where you're at as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a competition. It's
No.
not even a competition against your past self. It's
Hell
just
no.
about going, well, this is where I am at the moment. And this is, if I'm looking at what works for me in my life and where I want and what I need and what have you, and what's important to me and blah, blah, blah. And then we go, right, what does that mean for all of these other areas of my life, rather than, oh, I've got to fix my business or do this here so that I can. It's like, no, we've got to start with that real sense of being in presence and awareness first, and let that intentionally drive our decision making.
100%. I love that. So we are kind of coming up to the end of time.
Goes so quick.
I know it does. And as you know, we could talk about this kind of stuff and so much more, so much deeper, which we will. We'll get there in another episode. Um, so, what does being a divine, messy human mean to you?
It means being honest with yourself.
Yeah. And what about self mastery? How does that fit in and what does it mean to you?
So self mastery is really, to me, is about knowing who you are and not being influenced, swayed, molded by the world around you. Like, actually just being in yourself, knowing who you are, knowing how you tick, understanding your strengths, understanding your weaknesses, not being aware that your thoughts are just your thoughts, and your thoughts are going to create an emotion, and you don't need to be driven by your emotions, but actually just it's like learning how to ride the vehicle or drive the vehicle. To me, that's self-mastery. Like, we've all got our makeup, what we are. Self-mastery is about working from your heart and just empowering who you are in the most positive way to live the most purposeful, meaningful, fulfilling life that you can.
Oh, fabulous. And tell people how they can get hold of you.
Well, you can come and find me at thehappinesshunter.com. I've also got a podcast called The Happiness Hunter Podcast, or I'm on all the social media platforms. You can come find Fiona Redding on Facebook, or The Happiness Hunters on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so, so much for shining your light in the world and for being you and for spreading this beautiful work. We need more of you in the world. or more of us doing all of this work and shining those lights and being a guide for people as they walk their own paths. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Absolute pleasure.